a life, can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames are whipping up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys? Happy Independence Day weekend, Independence Weekend to you folks out there. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I am super happy to have you here. Today is going to be a really quick lesson. We're going to talk about this little quick accountability conversation and going to see how much you guys know about history in general, your history in general. So many people here today, this is 2021. People consider themselves, if they're brown skin, dark skin, whatever, there are so many different colorful ways to determine or define who you are right now in America if you're a brown person. One of the interesting concepts is BIPOC, Black Indigenous People of Color, right? It's a whole thing. It's a movement. I didn't know it was a movement. Didn't know it was a thing until probably right before COVID. Maybe it became a thing then. Who knows? Anyway, many Black people, Black and brown people, African American people, as what they call themselves oftentimes, but even though they're just American people, Black American people, oftentimes people refer to themselves as people who do not identify with American-centered holidays, and they have a host of reasons as to why it is they don't, right? Here recently, after George Floyd, we see so many movements that have been removing statues and monuments and things that at one point were considered to be the centralized focus of American memories, right? The Confederate War is one of, still to this day, the most deadliest wars ever embarked upon. Oh, yeah, Civil War, as they call it. But it's considered to be one of the most deadliest wars, right? I say it's America's war because it's a war between one country that is now divided as a result of that particular war. Before this war started, there was something that started happening in America, okay? And it's called the abolishment of slavery. Lots of folks don't know that. Folks are like, slavery was abolished as a result of the war. That's not true. Laws were already incorporated to start ending slavery much before the war started. And to be honest with you, it had a lot to do with why the war really did start. So in about 1701, 1704 time frame, the northern states started to say, you know what? Just not into having these slaves. I'm just not into this type of labor. I'm not into enslaving these Black and brown people. Why, you ask? Because this country was founded, believe it or not, by both brown people and white-faced people. And so as a result, those people who were brown and had slaves, you don't look like you're supporting the cause. Nope. So one could say they were guilt tripped into changing their minds and moving on and, gaining a different perspective. Or one could say that, they just grew into a different light. right? Got what they needed from them and said, you know what? I'm going to give you an opportunity to start earning some money because this is beneath you. And so their counterparts that may have been white faced in their company and having parties and things like that, entertaining, may have decided to buy on just because, you know what? My neighbor across the street, who seems to be a very wealthy brown person, has decided that he's going to allow his slaves to kind of buy their way out. And you know what? He's getting more labor out of them too. Whatever. So some people are really, really smart, right? Come up with ideas and they're innovators, creators of movements, entire movements. So this led to more northern states buying into the idea of releasing slaves or allowing slaves to buy their freedom to become free men. And a lot of people are like, well, how the hell is it possible that slaves bought their freedom? Because slaves didn't make any money. They didn't make any money. That's not true. That's not true at all. So when I tell you that Black American people are sometimes some of the most ill-advised people about Black American history, we are those people. And some of us, it's not even ill-advisement, it's just pure ignorance. We don't care to know anything that is in depth or about our history simply because that thing negates that wonderful cop-out that we oftentimes pull, suppression, oppression, all that good stuff. But anyway, I want you guys to understand this. In the early 1700s, slavery was starting to trickle down and say, you know what, this ain't it. And then we get into the late 1700s, where we have one of the most prominent members of the Civil War, of this revolution altogether. He's the first person that decided to buy his way out as a slave, but then not only enlist initially, but he re-enlisted several times, because what he saw is, okay, now I'm a free man, but I'm fighting this cause to see which side wins so that I can have a stake in this whole thing about other slaves. Other slaves need their freedom. In about 1861-ish, there was like an incentive for the vast majority of people to go ahead and let their slaves go. Why? Because Abraham Lincoln abolished slavery then. That's when it happened. Even though in 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation was official, simply because even though it was initially signed in 1861 in April, in 1865 is when the war ended. So it didn't end when it was anticipated to end. It continued on. And so many people see, oh, well, this just never happened. The war never ended. Nobody was trying to get rid of slaves until 1865. No, people were getting rid of slavery in the early 1700s. Okay. The late 1700s, it became a more popular thing, more prevalent. 1860, 1861, that year was like, okay, I've had it. The president of these territories, these colonies, right, said, you know what? It's a thing. We're done. Slavery's over. The war is due to end here, and we're going to get rid of slavery. However, slavery continued and people continued to enlist. So I want to draw you guys' attention to some research, because I want you guys to look at the history of this guy, because I feel like he is, to me, my hero. His name is Salem Poor. This is how you spell it. Okay. And he is pretty amazing. Okay. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing guy. This is the guy who bought his freedom, right? He worked really hard to buy his freedom. I think he was from Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken, either Massachusetts or Virginia, and worked really hard to buy his freedom, and then decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I am going to be a part of this war. This is something that I feel like I got to get, a stake in. I feel like I've got to be a part of effective change. But this dude, man, they said that Salem Poor was one of the people who fought like strategized like he was an officer in the military. It's like he was the art of war. So this is the person I want to draw your attention to before we have an expanded conversation later on today. But I want you to just look at that, and I want you to look at his great accomplishments. I want you to know when we come back to this conversation, who is this guy known for murdering during this war, right? Who is his famous kill? Great stuff. It's great stuff out here. His story is one of the most captivating stories, not only of slavery and how that ended and how it transcended for him and how it impacted his life, but also his time on the battlefield is one that I think that I'm particularly excited about people hearing, having more conversations around, maybe having those conversations with your Black and brown kids, because it may, I don't know, give them motivation. It may give them insight into the greatness in which we are, descendants of. However, have that, and then we're going to talk about Ty and things like that. But I'm sure you guys know about these folks because those folks were more popular than Salem Poor oftentimes, and are mentioned oftentimes more often than him. So we're going to have those conversations. And then I also want to have a conversation about monuments and the Confederacy and what it meant for the Confederate states and things like that, because you guys got to know that he wasn't fighting on the Confederate side of things. Okay. So we're going to have these conversations later on. And I want to know why it is that so many Black people have this mindset that, you know what, you're Black, you're super blackity black. Why do you celebrate Independence Day? And they have that mindset and they go forth and they say that because we're Black, we should be only celebrating Juneteenth. Honey, Juneteenth is just half of your story. Not even half. Probably like a cool 10% for the vast majority of Black Americans, because most of you Black Americans aren't descendants of Texas. You're just not in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So it is what it is. I think that each individual has to know their history. I think each individual needs to understand the impact of this war, and as a result, the impact on their culture, because a lot of you are from descendants that survived in the aftermath of this war. Okay. You ain't so blackity black anyway. Because what about when the reparations, the repair efforts for the railroad that was damaged in the southern states that were damaged and things like that, and all of these Asian people are over here doing their due diligence and things like that. So there is a lot to be learned about why you should be celebrating 4th of July and its independence. You're American. It's a part of your culture. Whether you're this color, shape, shade of American or not, this is your country. This is where you were born. So everything about it should be celebrated by you. I find it to be really interesting sometimes how we like to dissociate from and disconnect ourselves from our roots. And many of us are descendants of great people who did great things, not only in this revolution, right? But also in so many other ways. A lot of you are children of and grandchildren of people who fought in the Vietnam War and Korean War and things like that. And you guys actually have the energy to walk around and say, you know what? This isn't my country. This country isn't built for me. It doesn't represent me. Man, all that stuff is really interesting to me. It really is. But so I want you guys to share your insights. Tell me why you don't celebrate if you choose not to celebrate. Tell me why you do celebrate if you feel like it's important for you to celebrate. And tell me the things that you know about Salem Poor after you do your research. Tell me who you find that he is the most known for killing on the battlefield and how it went down. The story is just so amazing, right? So captivating. I'll tell you guys right now, he fought in several battles, but Bunker Hill is where you're going to find the interesting story. Okay. Just going to go ahead and put the spoiler alert out. So anyway, go on, do your research, do that. Let's have a conversation about accountability that's really in depth later on today, and we'll see where these things go. Okay. So that's all I've got for right now. Later days, I'm going to go get these nails done and all that good stuff. Talk to you guys later. Take care. Be nice to one another and make good decisions. Don't do anything crazy while I'm gone, Talk to you later.
but life can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.